Welcome back to AfricaCom TV, where obviously we are accelerating the conversation, the dialogue, the ideas around the enterprise digital transformation of the African continent. And now we are at AMOS by Spacecom, and joining me is Eran Shapiro. Eran, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for being here.
What is new at Spacecom?
Well, actually quite a lot of stuff. During this summer, we've launched a new and advanced satellite, which is AMOS 17. It's a new satellite dedicated and designed specifically for the African continent. And what it means that now we can serve Africa from 3 different orbital positions. 17 East now with AMOS 17, 4 West with AMOS 7, and 65 East with AMOS 4. So we are providing now multiple services to multiple customers, and we are very excited to be able to support closing the digital divide in Africa with our new enhanced capabilities.
Which is very important. Now, you were presenting about HTS, looking at cost versus capacity, as well as the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a brief summary of that?
Sure.
presentation?
What I was doing, I was summarizing the evolution of HTS technology, high throughput satellite technology over the years, and how we learned lessons from earlier version of high throughput satellites. In the end of the day, when you're looking at the HTS, it was a disruptive technology for the SATCOM industry, and it provided us with a magnitude more of capacity or throughput compared to typical FSS satellites. However, when you looked at some of the earlier implementation of HTS capacity, you saw that while there is a lot of available capacity, there is a large chunk of the capacity which is unused. So some of the areas are fully saturated, there's a lot of demand, while some capacity on the satellite is sitting idle and waiting to be used because there are not enough potential customers in the area of coverage. So while we as the industry were able to lower the cost per megabit per second in space, the actual cost of megabit per second was not able to follow that as low when you look at the actual service, including the ground segment, because the satellite resources were not utilized to the best. So satellite had a lot of capacity, but a large chunk of it was not usable. So when you're looking at new satellites and new technology, you should be looking at, okay, what is the service I'm looking for, and how do I do the trade-off between the high throughput that is needed for some of the services on one hand, how can I reduce the overall cost of the service on the other hand, and how simple it is to move current and future customers to use the satellite. This is a balance which is changing between different services and different satellites, and this is what I was trying to cover during the presentation.
And how is Spacecom looking to address those questions?
Yes, so one of the things is that the industry as a whole, as well as each satellite operator, we are developing new solutions on how we can make everything more efficient, like more efficient use of satellite resources on one hand, a gradual rollout of services on the ground, and making the rollout as simple as possible. As an example, one way of doing what we talked about, providing flexibility for the usage of the satellite resources, is using a digital processor in the satellite, which allows us to move power, move spectrum, and the result is moving capacity based on the actual demand of the ground. And this way, when there is demand, you can offer a lot of capacity. When there is not so much demand, you can offer less capacity, meaning that it's more efficient. And AMOS 17, for example, is a satellite of a new generation with such a digital processor on board.
Let's drill down a bit more than on AMOS 17. It is a satellite you've put up into the space specifically to serve Africa.
Correct.
How is it going to do that?
Well, so one of the things, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is we're using this digital processor capability in order to better match the specific services in Africa, which are very diverse. On one hand, you may have customers who are looking to connect the unconnected at the rural and the suburban type of areas. And for that, you may use wireless technology, cellular technology, and so on. So they have one way or one set of requirements for satellite capacity. On the other hand, you may have professional services like DTT distribution. So now you can, if you want to send digital television, instead of going direct to home, you can do it to centers in each region, and from there it's being broadcast wireless. However, you still need to distribute the content to those locations. So satellite is a very effective way of distributing this content. So by taking into consideration that there are so many different types of services, we were trying to make sure that on one hand we offer this high capacity.
Yeah.
However, we can support some of the unique requirements for Africa, which is the need for high availability. A lot of Africa is tropical water, so weather has a big impact on most of the HTS satellite in Africa. So we designed something new, which is a HTS in C-band. And what we gain with that is that for all those professional services, including cellular backhaul, including all critical application, you gain the C-band high availability on one hand, as well as the high throughput of an HTS on the other end. So this mixture is something that was not done before.
Yeah.
We are the first, so we took this innovative approach one step further. And we also made sure that the rollout for those providing service on the ground will be as simple as possible. An example of this coverage is that in typical HTS environment, you've got each country served by multiple beams. For that to work well, you need the ground segment to support it, which means it's usually very expensive because it has to support multiple beams, and sometimes it is located outside of Africa. This is not the requirement in Africa. In Africa, a lot of the requirement is for in-country services.
Yeah.
So what we made sure is that each major country is served by a single beam. So whatever is your current investment in satellite solutions, when you're using a single HTS beam, you don't need to change anything. You're staying with your current requirement, your current equipment. There's no need to upgrade, there's no need to invest. You just now can get from this new satellite much higher capacity and the ability to serve at a much more cost-effective price point those more rural locations that until now there was no economical justification to connect them. So this is how we see our small contribution to closing the digital divide in Africa, and that's why we're so excited to offer now AMOS 17 to the marketplace.
I think it's a little bit more than just a small contribution. Thank you very much, Eran Shapiro. It's with AMOS by Spacecom.
Thank you.